Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you some non-World War II historical fiction recommendations. Alright, so I did another video very similar to this way back when I started my channel, like right when I started my channel. And so I will link that video down below. It's a little cringy, but I was just beginning. And I still stand by all of those recommendations. They are all still like some of my favorite books. But I thought I would do an updated version on some new books that I've read that I want to add to the list. And yeah, so let's just get into this. I don't even know how many books I have here. I have quite a few. But these are all books that are not surrounding World War II because we know that the historical fiction genre is a little saturated in World War II. Fiction, and so I will do another video with just World War II historical fiction recommendations, but for today we're doing non-World War II. So the first book that I want to talk about, I'm going to start with books that I don't currently own. And the first book that I want to talk about is My Dear Hamilton by Stephanie Dray and Laura Moyes. This is a book that I read in 2020 and I thoroughly enjoyed. It is from the point of view of Eliza Hamilton, who was Alexander Hamilton's wife, and it follows her from before she met Alexander to her death, basically. It is very detailed, it's very long, it's a rather dense book, but it was so well researched, and I just felt like the authors did such a thorough job in really getting into the mind of Eliza Hamilton and kind of what was going on with her with all of the scandal and the political climate and the Revolutionary War and everything that her husband was involved in and how she perceived that and how she handled it and how she, acted on it. And so I thoroughly enjoyed this. If you're a Hamilton fan, I highly suggest picking up this book. It was a very good read. All right, the next book that I want to recommend that I don't currently own is The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. This is another one that was a favorite of mine in 2020, and this follows the Packhorse Library in Kentucky in the 1930s. And so it follows our main character, who her name is completely eluding me right now, but she basically moves to Kentucky from England. She kind of spur of the moment decides to marry someone who is on a trip there and comes over from England and is now living with her new husband and her very authoritative and not very nice father-in-law. And so in order to socialize a little bit more and to make some friends, she decides to join the Packhorse Library. And through this decision, she meets this wonderful group of female friends, and we follow kind of each of their storylines and what's happening with each of them, what brought them to the Packhorse Library, how they're dealing with some of the persecution that they're feeling or that they're dealing with. And yeah, there is a kind of a courtroom drama aspect to this book as well. I stand by the fact that if you enjoyed Where the Crawdads Sing, you're going to love The Giver of Stars. It has a very similar atmosphere to it, but I just absolutely adored this book. So that is my second recommendation. All right, the next one that I want to talk about is The Gown by Jennifer Robson. This is one that takes place after World War II, shortly after World War II, and it has to do with Queen Elizabeth II's wedding, specifically following two women who worked to embroider her wedding gown. This was seen as kind of frivolous because it's post-war depression, just people don't have a lot, and so it was very controversial how much money was being spent on her wedding. And we are following two embroiderers, one is Jewish, one is not, and just kind of how they're handling things. It was super interesting just to see kind of post-war what was going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed that one as well. So I recommend that. All right, another one that I read that was very different, but I really enjoyed it, is The Life She Was Given by Ellen Marie Wiseman. I think that's right. I'll put it up here. But this follows our main character, who is an albino girl, and her mom decides to sell her to the circus. And it's kind of what happens with her life after that. It's told in dual timeline, so we're getting this kind of present day timeline, and we don't really know what's going on with it. But really, we're following this girl who is sold to the circus by her mother, who is embarrassed by her. And it's horrifying and heartbreaking, but so interesting at the same time. And so, yeah, I enjoyed that one quite a bit as well. All right, I think those are all of the ones that I don't currently own. And so now we're going to get into the ones that I do own that I love. All right, so the first one on this list is Molokai by Alan Brennert. This is another one that's very dense. It's very long. It basically chronicles this girl's life, Rachel, and she is born in Hawaii in the late 1800s, 1891. She's not born then. She's like 8 years old then. But she ends up contracting leprosy. And back then, the Hawaiians didn't really know how to handle it. And so they basically made a leper colony on Molokai. And so she is sent without any of her family to live on Molokai in this leper colony. And you follow her throughout her entire life. And it is absolutely fascinating. Like I said, it's another dense read. It's long, very detailed, but so interesting at the same time. Very highly suggest this one if you're into something like that. Another dense one, can we tell there's a theme going on here, is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amortols. This is not a book that's for everybody, and I am aware of that. I actually DNF'd this twice before I made it through it, and I tried listening to the audiobook twice, and it was just a no-go, and once I picked it up physically, I was completely sucked in by the writing. I love the writing of this, but this follows our main character, Count Rostov, who is condemned to house arrest at the Metropole Hotel in Moscow, starting in 1922. And so this follows basically his life at the Metropole Hotel. We follow the friends he makes along the way, kind of a found family element to it, but it is just his life at this hotel. There's not a lot of plot. It's a very, very character-driven novel. It is a lengthy one, but it pays off. It is so rewarding. It is so good. And the writing is chef's kiss amazing. So if that sounds like something you would like, highly recommend that one. All right. One that is not dense, this one is actually a fairly easy read, is As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner. I stand by the fact that I hate this cover. I hate this purple. I think it's atrocious. The spine, bleh. But the book itself is fantastic. This follows a family, what is their names? The Bright family, who moves to Philadelphia in 1918 to become morticians. Their father is going to become a undertaker, basically. And they arrive there, they're doing that, and then the Spanish flu breaks out. And so we're following them through that whole ordeal, as well as World War I is going on, and that plays a role in this as well. We then jump ahead, I think it's like 5 or 6 years, and kind of see the aftermath of what happened. And it is told from the point of view of the mother and each of the 3 daughters. It is so good, so engaging. This is one that you just want to keep flipping the pages to figure out what happened, or what's going on. Loved it. Highly recommend. I still want to read more Susan Meisner. I haven't yet. Otherwise, I'm sure more of her stuff would be on this list. All right. One by an author that I absolutely love is Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. You will see her come up in my World War II historical fiction recommendations, but this is her non-World War II one that I absolutely loved. This takes place after the Spanish Civil War in Spain, and we follow 2 different teenagers there. One, Anna, is a maid at a hotel there, and the other one, what's his name? I don't even remember now. Daniel is visiting Spain with his parents. His father is kind of an oil entrepreneur from Texas, and he is really, Daniel is really into photography, and him and Anna form this friendship, and basically she gets to show him what the real Spain is like under the dictatorship of Francisco Franco. And it was very, like, this book was just, it was so good. It was another one, very short chapters, very easy to read through. I mean, it's a thick book, but it reads fast, and it was so good. And it definitely taught me a lot about a time in history that I knew nothing about. Like, I didn't even know that there was a Spanish Civil War. That's how ignorant I was going into this. And now I do. And the whole thing is completely fascinating to me. So pick this one up if you are into a quick read that will teach you something about a time in history that is never talked about. All right. And then the last two that I have here are both by the same author. And I read them in 2019 and 2020, I think. I don't know if I'm doing that right. 2018 and 2019, whatever. I read them within the past 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Not important. But that is If You Want to Make God Laugh and Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Marais. I like Hum If You Don't Know the Words a little bit better. If I had to read one or the other, I would say read Hum, but they're both really good. Hum If You Don't Know the Words is set in the 1980s in South Africa during apartheid. A plane is going overhead, so sorry if you can hear that. But so it's set during apartheid. We follow a 10-year-old little girl and a 10-year-old white girl and a 50-year-old black woman, and they cross paths at a certain point, and you kind of learn the different dynamics that are happening in South Africa at that time, and just kind of what lengths people will go to find their family, and whether that is a blood relative family or not. And so it's just so good. Children. I apologize for that. All right. The other one by Bianca Marais that I also really enjoyed is If You Want to Make God Laugh. This takes place in the 90s after apartheid, and Nelson Mandela has just become president, and it follows the AIDS crisis that's happening in South Africa. So we follow 3 different women. One is a black teen, and then 2 are white older women, and just kind of, once again, their paths all kind of intersect at a certain point. It was a lot. It was super eye-opening, very horrifying. I wasn't a huge lover of the ending of this, but the whole book, I mean, like you can see, I loved the reading process of this. I found the ending a little problematic, but I don't think that takes away from the fact that you should read it and just like soak up. Bianca Marai's writing is some of my favorite writing I have ever read. Her and Frederick Bachman, I think, are just some of the writers that they just have these little one-liners that are just like will punch you in the gut. They're so good. My kids are being so loud right now, so I'm going to wrap this up. This is great. Read it. That's it. Those are all of the books that I wanted to recommend for you to read if you are looking for some historical fiction that is not centered around World War II. So if you have read any of these, I would love to hear your comments about them down below in the description box or in the comments section. And if you have any non-World War II historical fiction recommendations for me, leave those down there as well. And yeah, other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.